Hi, everyone. I'm Nida El-Relami, and welcome to the Peacelab podcast. So, in today's episode, we will be talking about opening up the heart and what is the practice to continuously do this and keep on coming back to our heart center and really trying to emote from this place and having more awareness over our heart. And so, I wanted to open up this podcast today with a quote by Rumi where he says, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." And every time I hear this quote by Rumi, I always think about him referring to the heart space, because this is where, for me personally, I feel the most intensely when I'm in pain or when my heart is broken. I feel it in my chest where my heart is. And I always think about that pain creating an opening for light to seep through and to make me more resilient and stronger. And I think this is a beautiful reminder. And I talked about it before in past podcast episodes with Peacelab, but every single time we are going through something difficult in our lives or feeling immense emotions like pain and suffering and any kind of darker emotions that we can't even feel or don't even want to feel sometimes because they're so powerful, we always have to remember that the duality of pain and suffering and light and joy. And we have to remember that everything that we experience, even if it's pain and hurt, is actually in the spectrum of the human experience for us to be able to feel all of the light, joy, and happiness and bring in the good feelings as well as the bad. Because once we feel and let ourselves experience pain and difficult emotions, then are we truly able to understand the light and the joy that is out there and understand the full spectrum of the human experience. We would rather go through this type of suffering or these challenges, this darkness, these intense emotions, than be disconnected from these experiences. Because if we were disconnected from these experiences, we would actually be living in a weird dystopian novel where we don't feel the reality of things and we are not as colorful as human beings as we could. I'll give an example because this reminds me about my time in Paris over the summer. So when I was in Paris over the summer, I was going to a lot of museums and I would spend time with the Greek and Roman statues. And I found it very pleasant and humorous almost because I was thinking how dramatic humans are. Like every sculpture is always this scene in mythology or this depiction of people going through an intense emotion or suffering. You have two lovers grasping at each other and not wanting to let go, but you know that it's some kind of tragedy that happens that broke them apart. Or you have a father in contemplation and with grief on his face because of this of a story of him losing his son. And it was breathtaking and so beautiful to see and witness this art, but at the same time, it gave me so much more compassion for the human experience because I think back in the day, all of these stories in Greek and Roman mythology, and not just in the Western world, but with the African art as well and Persian art, you always had these really emotional stories of the human experience and these characters that were playing out all of the different states of grief and trauma and tragedy. And I think back then it was a lot more acceptable and just understood to be so paramount to the human experience and even to spirituality in itself. And I think in today's age, sometimes we lose sight of that and we want to numb ourselves from the human experience and remove ourselves entirely from those really deep emotions. But just walking through those museums and witnessing that art again, it was just such a reminder because it's just the cosmic joke. Like, at the same time as we feel these deep emotions, we should be able to laugh at ourselves, because this is also part of it. This is part of the human experience, is to go through the whole spectrum of emotions. And when you look at this type of art, you have a lot more compassion for the different layers of you, the different moments of life where it takes you up and down that emotional wave, and you have more compassion to allow yourself to experience them without shaming them or trying to numb or escape them, just allowing the full spectrum of emotions to arise. And I'm going off on a little tangent here, but it's just a reminder, because a lot of what I talk about in Peacelab is to really allow the darkness and the integration of light and dark to make you feel more alive, make you feel human again, make you feel love and sadness and loss and despair, but at the same time, joy and feeling alive and freedom, all at the same time, because we are here to experience both of them. And you can't just expect to have this human experience void of the darker emotions. It's just impossible. So really try to embrace the things that come up for you, and don't be trapped in them, but allow them space to come up, because they're always going to be coming up to transform you and to make you a deeper and more rich person with a complex and beautiful soul. And in turn, you will meet other people that you can resonate with, who seek your companionship and your love because of how deep you can go and how much presence you hold for their own emotions. And I'll get into that more in today's episode, but I just went off a tangent here. So yes, the wound is the place where the light enters you, is what Rumi says. And I wanted us to just take a moment to feel where the light hits us in our heart. And at the same time, feel where the pain is experienced in our heart, and feel how rich this makes you, how gorgeous this makes your soul and your essence as a human. To feel both pain and darkness, grief, sadness, but also how it deepens you, how it deepens you to feel love, happiness, peace. I want you to thank your heart for being so strong and resilient. Your heart is able to hold the full spectrum of being human. Your heart is able to hold light and darkness at the same time. Thank grief, sadness, pain that comes up, because it's always a teacher. It's always a lesson, and it's always there to show you the capacity of how much love and light and peace your heart can actually hold. Because without this pain and suffering or darkness that is felt, you would never know the full capacity of love that you are able to feel. So, today's episode, I really wanted to get into how to practice opening the heart and when to recognize the times that you might be closed off. The moments that we can pay attention to understand when our heart is closing are those moments when you feel anger, jealousy, or hurt. Better yet, those moments where you start to tense up and feel the need to protect yourself or fall back into defense mode. And I really want you to be honest with yourself and think about these moments where your guard is up, because oftentimes we become unconscious to these moments because we validate them. We say, of course, I'm acting this way. Of course, I have to protect myself because that person has done this in the past to me. Or I've experienced this in the past. Or I know them and I know their motives and they're there to hurt me. Think about all of the stories that we often get caught up in to confirm the reasons why we close off, to confirm the reasons why our pain needs to be protected. It's not easy to recognize the times when you are more defensive or in protection mode. I feel that I have been working on my self-development and inner peace for almost more than a decade now. And still at 29, I'm still going through moments of understanding where I am protecting myself and closing off my heart. The point is not to judge ourselves for choosing to protect our heart, but just understanding that when the time comes and when your nervous system is ready to show you where you have been protecting yourself, you'll be ready to receive it, and that you will have the free will to decide to change your own story. Some of you may know that Peacelab is partnering with peace activation right now. I'm working with a facilitator named Eva Dalak, who has been running our Inner Peace to Clarity workshops. I will explain more about those workshops later, but the reason why I'm bringing this up to you right now in this podcast is because for the last several months I have been doing private one-on-one sessions with Eva, because Eva is a spiritual psychologist and a peace building practitioner of 30 years, and she's coaching me to be a peace building facilitator so I can eventually lead these workshops for Peacelab myself. But before we got into that training for me to facilitate workshops, I had to go through an initiation. I had to become more of an embodiment of peace. I mean, that's not what the training is called, but that's how I see it, because I never want to be speaking about inner peace on this platform or with this community unless I am also authentically showing up and doing the inner work and working on my spiritual hygiene. And so through the 9 sessions that me and Ava have been having, I have been understanding the places where I was closed off in my heart. And the inner work can be done solo and independently, and I have been doing that for many years. But also working with a therapist or a coach, a psychologist, is really beneficial and important because they show you the places where you can't see about your own ego, and they shine a light on the stories that you've been unconsciously following. And so I always think that community and with a trained professional facilitator or coach, therapist, is extremely important for this kind of work. And also, working with a facilitator or a professional or a coach, you can see the places where you feel distrust. You can start to see the places where you tense up, where you have your protection up. You create barriers for the other person to see you and understand you emotionally. And you only feed them the parts of you that you're okay with feeding them. You know, the parts of you that you're like, okay, I've already worked through this, or I've intellectualized this pain or this moment already before, so I feel comfortable showing this to this professional or even your friend. You tell your friend or your partner about a moment of hurt in your life, but it's based off of your comfortability about speaking about it, which is fine. But when you are fully trusting a coach or facilitator to work with, and they start to see you in your most vulnerable moments when you are talking about something that was deeply traumatizing or an insecurity that you have felt. And they witness you in that vulnerability, and you are allowed to show yourself in the messiness and the pain in front of someone, and they accept you and they give you space. It could be the most transformative, life-changing event, because humans all just want to be seen and witnessed and held in moments like this. Since our childhood, we just want to be seen and understood. And so when somebody is trained to give you that space, it can rewire those past experiences for you gradually. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because the past sessions that I've had with Eva, each time I have understood where I have been closed off in my heart unintentionally or unaware of it. And it wasn't until it was the first session that I had with Eva when I was in Paris. I was very fearful to do my training with her, my one-on-one coaching, because when we talked about it, I felt very vulnerable. I had been spending months with her talking about partnership strategy for Peacelab, and I was comfortable with it, and we had the same mission. But when it came down to talking about my own inner work, my own transformation that I had to go through to be able to create more workshops for Peacelab, I was really scared because I knew that it was going to be go time once I started coaching with Eva. And the first moment that we talked about me starting the coaching sessions, I was super vulnerable and scared. And what came up through me was distrust about the process and fear, because I had never done this type of work with somebody else before. It's one thing to go home and journal and cry and process pain by yourself, and then wake up the next morning and tell your friend about it, or your sibling or your parent, after it has already been processed through you. But it's another thing to have someone mirror back to you the places where your ego is strong and trying to protect yourself, or holding on to negative beliefs or negative self-talk or stories that are actually holding you back from your truth and your expansion. And just because I knew Ava's work and I knew how long she has been a spiritual psychologist and peace builder, I just knew that once I started with her, there was no hiding. Like, she was really going to push me in a good way to transform. And so what happened that first week of me processing that this was about to happen was I felt a lot of nerves, and I felt shaky. I felt scared. I felt where my heart was trying to close and protect myself. And it was all somatic, like it was all in my body that I was feeling these sensations, the tightness of the chest, the fear that was coming up. And the only reason why I was able to recognize that this fear was coming up in the body and it was false, it was not real danger, was because I had this experience about last October where my body was reminded of a situation in the past. So, where I had a lot of grief and pain, and so my body was reacting as if that pain was happening again. Because our body is just trying to protect us from past experiences where we were really hurt. And it will create the same symptoms emotionally and the same tightness and fear response as if we are in extreme danger. And because I had that experience in the past, I knew that my response to coaching sessions, which is clearly good for me and is clearly something that is for my evolution and my spiritual growth and the growth of my business and my platform, even though I knew it was good logically and consciously, my body was responding negatively because it wanted to keep me safe. And the body kind of self-sabotages, the mind self-sabotages sometimes because it doesn't want us to change and rewire our story. And it's not like we don't punish the body or the mind for thinking these things and trying to keep us limited and small. It's just doing it to protect us. But I guess what we need to be strengthening is this awareness and this intuition that when you are faced with a challenge or a moment of transition in your life, or met with somebody that kind of triggers that insecurity in you, and you start to feel anxious or fear or like you want to run away, really try to assess if the fear and the tightness that you are experiencing and the anxiety is truly from a dangerous situation that's about to occur or from a past experience, and calm your body to come back to a place of calmness and peace and say, this is not going to hurt me. There's no grizzly bear that's running after me. There's no danger in front of me. Actually, this decision to do this coaching with her or take this job or move to a different state or move to a different country can be the best thing for my life and can be the answer and the prayer that I have been waiting for. When you do decide to take that leap and do the thing that causes fear and scares you, you are rewiring your body to trust yourself more with those type of experiences. I hope this makes sense. Obviously, if your intuition is telling you something feels dangerous or off, listen to it if it's the truth. But if you know that making a decision is for your highest good and for the evolution of your soul and for the advancement of your career or your business or your relationship, then go after it. Because the breakthrough is on the other side. It's about reprogramming and rewiring your brain and your nervous system to hold more and to trust yourself that this danger is not real and it's just the body trying to keep you small and the mind trying to keep you small and safe. We don't want to just stay small. We want to expand. We want to grow. We want to have the confidence to make decisions and change. So after my first session with Eva, and I was going through this experience of feeling a lot of fear, anxiety, but I knew it was for my transformation. I knew that this was the thing that I had always been waiting for, is the moment where I was going to feel aligned with a spiritual psychologist or a coach that was going to help me advance into my career and help me understand the places that I self-sabotage, the places that I'm still stuck in the old story of Nada in her 20s or Nada, in her mid-20s. The story of, you're not ready yet to start your own business. You're not ready yet to get a podcast. You're not ready yet to move to New York. You're not ready yet to go on a trip to Paris for 2 months. All of those stories that in my early 20s I was telling myself because of fear and societal programming and environmental programming. And each time I took the chance on myself, bet on myself, I grew more confident in my decision making, and I practiced my free will, and I gave myself grace for the moments that it felt like a mistake or it felt like the wrong turn, because in actuality it was never the wrong decision, it was never the wrong turn, but it was just like the pep talk. You will be fine no matter what. Any decision you make, you'll be okay. If you decide to move to New York and everything goes to shit, you're able to move to a different city again. But it didn't matter about how it played out. The real work was making the decision and then taking the leap forward and then understanding if it was a fit for me or not. And this is the muscle that we are strengthening through doing the things that feel hard, through doing the things that causes fear or anxiety. And so in this moment of my life over the summer, it was being witnessed in my insecurity, being witnessed in my vulnerability, and seeking mentorship and help to strengthen my nervous system to show me all of the places that I have been hiding because I was trying to protect my ego. I was ready to throw it all out the door because I knew that in order for Peacelab to succeed, in order for me to get to the goals that I wanted to get to, that I had to go through this mentorship with Eva, that I had to look at myself and see all of the shadows and the darkness that I had been blind to, whether that was conscious or subconscious. I just needed support in that. And I can never get over here and start talking to you about inner peace modalities unless I was able to do that hard work and transform constantly. And a lot about Peacelab is the community aspect. It's not trauma dumping in a community. Like, it's not about that, and it shouldn't scare people, but it's saying like, hey, we're all working through something. We are all facing these dark emotions, this shadow, this sadness, this grief, from breakup to a job loss to losing a parent or a family member, God forbid, or a friend. We are all experiencing these dark, deep emotions that feel messy. And forget about even the dark, deep emotions is one thing, but the vulnerable emotions of feeling insecure. Nobody wants to be insecure. Nobody wants to be found out that they feel insecure. Nobody wants to express that they have moments of feeling unsure about themselves or having doubt in their abilities, or those moments of second guessing ourselves or feeling insecure because a relationship just ended or a person has lost interest or moved on. Nobody wants to talk about these things. But what happens if we, through community and through mentorship and through friendship, allow each other the space to feel these things and give people the presence and the space to show their most vulnerable states to you so you can also do the same for them? Then we have a world and we have a community and a society where people are authentic. People are compassionate. They are understanding. They understand that even though your story is different from their story, that the shared emotions are there, that we all experience this spectrum of emotions. And this is extremely important because when we, going back to the opening the heart and the closing of the heart, your heart becomes closed when you do not allow yourself to be seen in all the different aspects of yourself. Your heart becomes closed when you're walking around with protection, that they can't see my insecure spot. If they saw me insecure, they would take advantage of me. They would try to manipulate me. They would take my money. They would take my resources. They would put me in a bad situation. Or I can't express my feelings to this person because I need to be strong and they need to understand that I am capable of handling myself, or whatever it is. All of these things that we do to protect our insecurity or our doubt in ourselves or our pain, it's actually fragmenting our bodies. You are controlling your own emotions internally, and you are controlling the environment around you, and only allowing people who don't trigger you to come in, or cutting out people who do, and only sharing experiences and parts of you with people under your terms, under your own control. It's not the same thing as boundary settings. Like, we should have boundaries that we set, and it's a level of self-respect when we do, but more of thinking about where we are controlling the environment and our internal landscape in order to be perceived in the highest light, to be perceived as somebody who is not insecure, to be perceived as someone who doesn't have these really intense emotions. Do you understand? Like, all of this that we do is actually taking away from our spontaneity as a human, our free expression. Going back to my story, when I had my first session with Eva, and what came up for me was that I was really insecure about allowing someone to see my inner landscape. And I didn't even realize that I had been controlling the way that I was perceived professionally or with mentors or even friends and even in relationships. I didn't even understand that I had control over myself in that way. I was doing very subtly, I didn't know, but working with her as a partner for Peacelab and then thinking about where the lines would cross as having her as a coach, I was a little bit scared about it. And I was trying to make these stories in my head why it probably wasn't appropriate. But that was just the surface. But what was actually underneath trying to understand that dynamic was the fact that I didn't want to go deep with someone else. I was scared to have someone see my inner world that wasn't me alone. And because that I knew that what I was experiencing in my body was fear and a pushback to my growth, I did it. I was like, okay, when are we going to do our first session? And I've had 7 or 8 sessions with her so far, and I'm telling you, it has been the most transformative experience of my life. Because for the first time, really understood how to be present with the emotions that are coming up internally for myself. I realized that through the work with Eva and through opening my heart to receive all of my pain, the emotions that were stuck in my nervous system, to bring them up and discuss them and be seen and witnessed in them in front of somebody who wasn't necessarily giving me advice, but just holding space for me to be seen in that vulnerability. What it actually did was it allowed this past trauma and this stored emotion in my body to be released. Because when I was re-experiencing pain or past trauma and she held space for me and walked me through it because she's a professional, it released it from my body. What it did was it created a more confident version of me. I felt more open. I felt that I could be more present with people. You know, when your friend is telling you something that's deeply emotional or they're experiencing hurt in front of you, do you listen to them? Do you hold space for them? Are you present with what they're saying? Or do you feel yourself trying to escape from these emotions or interrupt with advice or change the subject? Do you actually allow them to choke up and cry in front of you or open up their heart in front of you? And does it make you feel uncomfortable or awkward? Or do you feel okay in it? Because it's showing you, it's mirroring back to you where you're able to hold space for your own emotions. If you are feeling awkward or uncomfortable being present to somebody else's pain, then it means most likely that you're unable to give yourself your own emotions that same presence. And I did this a lot. I didn't realize that when people were hurt by me, by my actions, or they were expressing discomfort or pain, whether it was me or not, or something else that they were working through, I was always trying to go in problem-solving mode. I was always trying to figure out the best advice to help them. And I didn't realize that it was because I was uncomfortable with my own emotions like that. And maybe I wasn't going to say it was discomfort for my own emotions at the time. I thought more that I was being very helpful genuinely to them. And I thought that we could power through and we could figure out the solution. Through my experience with Eva and my coaching with her, and because I was processing through my own emotions, I had realized that it was something that I was doing with myself. That every time I had deeper, intense emotions, I was always trying to intellectualize to get to the next thing. I was saying okay, I know I feel this because of this. I'm experiencing grief or sadness, but I have to get on. I gotta move on. I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to feel insecure that this relationship just ended. I don't want to feel insecure that I didn't get the job offer or whatever it was, whatever it is. And I would just move on. But every time I did that, I wasn't really respecting or giving presence to my own emotions that were coming up. And in turn, it was making me operate like that with people that I loved and cared for. And I don't want to be like that. I want to be able to hold space for people and truly be there for them. It's just presence. And we're all going through this, I mean, this is one of the biggest things about conflict in our society is that we are so uncomfortable with this pain. We're so uncomfortable with these intense emotions, and our egos are protecting ourselves so much and closing ourselves off to listening and being present for somebody else's experience and their emotions. And we feel so triggered by it. Somebody is upset with us or telling us about their pain, and we automatically want to be defensive. We automatically want to protect our ego, and we feel that we're losing our own identity and our own story, especially if they are coming to us about how we hurt them or how they are not pleased with something that we did. But so what's the point about all of this? How do we get to a place where we don't feel reactive, we don't feel so defensive when we are experiencing conflict with our inner world or with other people outside of us? How do we get to the place where we have more compassion and understanding for the emotional state of somebody else and just understand that it's not a reflection of us and our identity? How do we get to that place where we're not in protection mode and trying to protect our story, our identity, our ego when we do get into conflict? What's the first step? And it's not something we're all going to learn right now today in this podcast, but it's really start to develop an awareness of those triggering moments. The next time you feel anger, the next time you feel fear, anxiety, anger, grief, pain from somebody else doing something to you, take a moment to understand your story. What are the stories you're telling yourself? Where is your ego trying to protect you from pain, from vulnerability, from being taken advantage of? What are the stories that you're telling yourself? That they want to hurt you, that they never care about you, that they never think about you. What are you telling yourself? And then when you identify that story that you're telling yourself, think about, where have you felt that before? The last relationship, your old employer, with your dad or your mom, with your sibling. Where did you feel that before? And is it a pattern? Is it a pattern? And are your defensive defaults and your protection of your heart and your emotions, are they coming from a place of expansion, or are they coming from a place of limitation? Is the conversation that you're supposed to have with someone going to expand you or keep you in the old story? Because we always want change in our lives. We always want things to improve, more money, more love, more abundance. We always want it. And we don't even realize that constantly we're getting experiences in our lives to help us change the story, to help us move from being stuck into more clarity, to help us from this job to the dream job. We are constantly getting situations that are showing up and chances to change. And so when we are faced with the chance to make a decision that would actually change the trajectory of our lives or expand our capacity to feel love and intimacy with another person, sometimes we feel fear or anxiety to go through it. Sometimes we feel the trigger before the breakthrough happens. So you know your own story. You know the places that you are protecting your ego. You know the places that you are protecting your heart and contracting rather than expanding, where you're staying small because of fear rather than taking a leap of faith for transformation and growth. You know those places intuitively. You know them. Trust your intuition. You will know if something feels dangerous or off. But something that could be the chance of breakthrough, of your evolution, of transformation, and you get those reactive triggers or that fear, be patient with yourself, but also trust yourself to take action, to take a chance to soften and open rather than close and contract. We always hear about opening the heart in terms of relationships and in love. Taking a chance on a relationship, taking a chance on a certain person. And yes, opening your heart to love will let go of the control and the protection and even isolation that you might feel. But think about love beyond even relationships. Think about it with community, with people that you're in conflict with yourself, with situations that you don't necessarily like. Be open to the experiences and people who are triggering you and who you're in conflict with. You don't have to always agree with them, but understand the places where you might feel attacked or triggered, where you might be closing your heart to understanding, to feel compassion, and try to see if you're Transformation is on the other side. And it doesn't even have to be that you go necessarily and talk to this person that you're in conflict with. It's just recognizing where you're closed, where you're still following an old patterning, or you're still following an old story, an old narrative that keeps you small and safe. And just that awareness alone and a decision how to move beyond that old programming can change your life. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast for today. I don't want to go too long. And after this conversation, I'm going to think more about ways to really break down this material so we could teach it in some of our workshops, and add it as resources. A lot of this inner work and personal transformation comes from journaling, meditating, working with a coach or therapist, working alongside community, and having the tools and the safety and feeling safe enough to open up and express yourself. And I recognize that not everybody might have access to these certain things. So with Peacelab, we are trying to make this a hub where all of these resources can be shared and this education can be shared as well. And so this is just a very small bit of it about opening the heart and developing the awareness and the consciousness around the spaces that you feel contracted and closed off, because everybody's on their own personal journey of healing and of transformation. What might take you a few days to a few months to process because of some really deep trauma that's happened or pain that is still living in your body might take somebody a day or an hour to process because the pain and the trauma is not as intense. Everybody is experiencing their own journey and dealing with their own personal stories and lived experiences. Your healing journey is going to be different from somebody else. What can take you several months to process and start to integrate in your body so you can start feeling safer and more open to expressing yourself emotionally, or even feeling safe enough to get into some of these deeper experiences of pain and grief and sadness, might take somebody else a day or an hour or a few days. It's really important that we don't judge ourselves for where we are at on our journey. We don't have to start uncontrollably sharing our inner world with people that haven't earned our trust yet or have shown us that this is a safe space to process these certain emotions with. So I want us to start to be open where we are contracting and closing off. I don't want us to push the process faster than we are able to handle. Some of the things that I'm working through with Ava now at 29 weren't able to be processed all of my 20s until this very moment, because my nervous system had to be able to handle some of the things that I'm remembering or working through. I didn't have the capacity in my early 20s to address some of these deeper things that I do now. And although in my early 20s, I really wanted to understand my limitations and I could see where I was blocked, whether that was financially, in career, or in relationships, or my communication style even. As much as I tried to unblock these limiting beliefs and journal or meditate or seek therapy, at that time, I still wasn't able to dive so deeply into those experiences and those limiting beliefs and those negative emotions so intensely. And I had to learn to have compassion for my growth and have compassion to where I was at and trust that where I'm at now, I'm able to go deeper into those things and unravel parts of myself that I wasn't able to see back in the day because my ego was very strong and I was still very much protecting myself. The reason why I'm saying all of this is because try as hard as you can not to judge yourself for where you're at. If you lose a relationship or you lose a job or you self-sabotage in a friendship at a certain point of your life and something negative happens as a result of you acting out reactively or you expressing anger or you shutting off from pain, just trust that that experience that happened was supposed to happen the way it was to shine light on what needs to change. But you can't go back into the past and rewrite it. So don't feel judgment and keep yourself in suffering, guilt, and shame because of something that has occurred in your past. You have to look at all of the experiences over the years or in different relationships and different moments of your life as a point where a lesson was learned for you to get to where you're at right now. And that's how you build wisdom. And I had to remember that from my mentor, my coach, Eva, that something that I experienced when I was 17 or even 22 was just because I didn't have the wisdom that I do now at 29. And even when I get older and I'm in my 50s or 60s, we're going to hold more and more wisdom. But we're not supposed to judge ourselves for all the places and the things that we have done or the experiences that we've had, even if we cause people hurt. The change happens right now. The opening happens right now. Every single day, every single moment, you open up a little bit more. You have compassion and love for where you were at and your story at the time. And you are constantly saying, how can I rewrite it today? Now that I'm aware of that was my self-sabotaging belief, that I was operating from my lowest self, from my pain, from my hurt, from my protection, and I was taking rather than expanding. Now that I know that, what can I do today to reprogram and rewire my mind and my body to act differently this time? And that process is the spiritual growth. That process is the inner peace transformed. And that's the first step and the work that we have to do and take personal accountability of our evolution and of our healing so we can better show up for communities, for relationships, and in everything that we do. And that's what Peacelab is about. That's the inner peace to the outer peace, because we have to address the inner world first. And nobody can do it for us. We have to do it for ourselves. And the more trust and the more attention we put on our inner world and our emotional state, the more we show ourselves love and compassion and healing, the better the world becomes. And that is how we start to feel like we have the ability to transform our lives and the environments around us, is because we start to have this awareness of self. So thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode. I love this work so much. Please follow, subscribe, do all of those things, and stay tuned for more of the Inner Peace to Clarity workshops and the 6-week course that we are hosting soon. All right, see you on the next one. Peace.